UKM is one of the is the pioneer in terms of nuclear education. I was among one of the few students in 1971 who opted, or actually who had interest in, at that time, in nuclear science, because UKM was started by many professors from Indonesia, and some of them are trained in nuclear chemistry, nuclear physics, radiobiology. They're all trained from US. And you must remember, in the 70s, nuclear technology was among the cutting edge technology. So everybody was trying to go into nuclear. So I happened to be there. So during my final year, I decided to opt for nuclear chemistry. So I went on to do my PhD in the United Kingdom, and yeah, I completed my PhD in radiochemistry, 1970s. It was a long time ago. So then we started the proper program in nuclear science since 1978. So that's how I started and to become interested in nuclear science. And recently the ministry was looking for someone who are well versed with nuclear science, radiation protection, and so on, to lead or to chair the Atomic Energy Licensing Board. And I was appointed by the minister based on that criteria. After the minister himself, of course, he had his own search committee, and he is very happy and satisfied to appoint me as the new chairman from 1st of August. Yes, because all this while I've been, in fact, I was a board member for AELB for 12 years. And then after 12 years, I decided, okay, to give a new blood. So I stepped down. And after being quiet for 6 years, then suddenly the minister appointed me as the chairman. So as a board member also was appointed by a minister. Because it's a requirement under the Atomic Energy Licensing Act, you need to have a board, where the board you must have chairman and you must have members that are appointed by ministers. Well, when we started, we were so keen to develop, to go on nuclear power program in the 70s. But then when the government decided to put on hold the nuclear power program, so actually we have to diversify, we have to do something else. So I concentrated on a very specialized area in nuclear analytical technique to study the environmental processes. But now, since nuclear power program is coming back, so the government is planning to have maybe post 2020, after 2020, we'll have our first nuclear power plant, and by 2030, I think we will have 4 units with a capacity of 4,000 megawatt. So that's now we are actually we are also revising our program in UKM to suit the requirement in terms of human resources, facilities, and so on, to support the sustainability of this nuclear power program. Yes, in fact, the whole department here has been working on mainly on safety, on environmental aspect, including safety, radiation safety. So it's all these fields are required when you have a nuclear power program, because people are so worried about safety, radiation, and radiation risk, and where people are so worried about how much increase in cancer cases in the long term. So we have all this model, and we have, my colleagues have been working on this, and we are doing on this, and At the moment, we have ample data on the background radiation. So if we have a nuclear power plant, then we'll know whether we have an increase of radiation in Malaysia or not. But I believe if there is an increase, it will be very little, and with a very stringent control, there shouldn't be any increase at all in terms of environmental radiation. Yeah. Now, AELB as a regulator. So the system is that you have the board, but at the same time you have the CEO of the Atomic Energy Licensing Board, which is something like a department and is headed by a Director General. So Director General is as an executive secretary in the board. So the board will control in terms of licensing, monitoring, and we regulate everything. This is important because in order to use nuclear energy or nuclear power, you must build confidence to the public, our neighbors, and international community. They will ask, do you have a strong regulatory body, or do you have enough regulation, laws, and so on to be implemented and to ensure safety of the nuclear power? And this is what we are doing. So very powerful organization under the Act. Okay, in fact, Fukushima, in terms of engineering design, is all well done. I mean, it's according to the plan, except that the tsunami that did not expect. So for Malaysia, we will choose, of course, after Fukushima incident, for a proper sites. Okay, and they will propose several sites, and Atomic Energy Licensing Board will look at the proposed sites and to make sure that it's all safe before we issue a license for whatever that they want to start work on. So one of the criteria is that it should be, well, by the sea is the most preferable site, by the sea. And of course, it has to be very strong in terms of foundation, no earthquake, and thirdly, should be no tsunami. So there are several places in Malaysia that fit those requirements. And of course, in Fukushima, the place was about 3-4 meters above the sea, but in Malaysia, the requirement, I think we are thinking about something like 30 meters above the sea level, at least. Yeah, so you can, from now, I think you can think of places where it is quite high from the sea level. With strong bedrock, granite. And yeah, we have a few places in Peninsula. We are talking about Peninsula Malaysia because the power program will be in Peninsula Malaysia. Actually, the nuclear power program is not that we want to replace everything with nuclear. No. Even by 2020, the nuclear power program will contribute about 20% of the electricity requirement generation. Right? The rest will be 5% will be from the hydro, and 70% from coal and gas. But unfortunately, by 2020, we are net importer for everything. We import coal now. At the moment, we have enough gas, but by 2020, we import gas as well. And of course, oil we are importing now. And with Bakun not coming into Semenanjung, so we are at the moment very dependent on fossil fuel. Alright, so by 2020 we hope renewable energy will come into the picture. Yeah, hopefully. So that we have a very good energy mix. You have a fossil, you have nuclear, you have renewable. So most probable source will be solar. But in terms of electricity generation, solar energy cannot be the base load. Base load means primary load. So it only maybe required during a peak hours during the day between 11 to 2. That's why the requirement is the highest.
So it can only be a
supplementary. Because in the evening, then it's only for 12 hours supply. So you still need some other sources. So our energy mix will be, of course, you have a nuclear, you have renewable, and you have fossil fuel, and hydro as well. Yeah. Okay, at the moment we have this Act 304, Atomic Energy Licensing Act. Of course, when we are going into nuclear power program, those act is not sufficient enough. So that's why we are developing new acts. There are several acts will be developed and need to be passed by the Parliament to ensure, because this is something that we call building confidence. You have acts and regulation, and people are happy. Even our neighbors will be happy, and the international community will be happy. So all these are required by International Atomic Energy Agency, who supervise or watchdog for nuclear power for the whole world. Yeah. So that's their requirement. We have to meet all those requirements before we decide or before we announce to go to nuclear. Okay, at the moment there are many vendors, suppliers, for example, Korea, South Korea, France, even Russia is doing business in this, and even Brazil also. Yeah, so there are several countries. But then, since you are talking about the year 2020, so I believe the type of reactor that we will have will be generation 3 plus, which is very advanced. And of course, by 2030, we will develop generation 4. And hopefully, in terms of local content, by 2030, we should have at least 50% of our local content. So even from the beginning, the localization aspect, we should target at least 10% localization. So otherwise, we will be just too dependent to suppliers if we don't develop. So we have the people, we have the resources, and I think because we have a lot of thorium in the country, so by thorium, uranium fuel, thorium. So maybe our reactor, the future reactor, will be based on thorium fuel, so that we are not bound by fuel suppliers. Yeah, that can be developed actually, thorium fuel, and people are working on generation 4 reactor based on thorium as well as uranium. So maybe we'll opt for thorium based reactor generation 4, just like India or China. Well, fuel supply. In fact, some material, for example, we have a few companies in Malaysia who are supplying material suitable for use in nuclear power program.
Already,
yeah, even though now the same material can be used for other industries, but then we have the capacity in Malaysia, and of course in terms of other electric generation, it's all we have the technology, except that the turbine power and so on we import, but the technology for power generation and supply is all indigenous. The only component is that the nuclear reactor. So the reactor, I think some component we can have ours, and that's why I'm confident by 2030 local content or localization should be more than 50%. Okay, when in the 70s, when the government started to have this nuclear research institute, in those days the name was Puspati, now the latest name is Nuclear Agency Malaysia. In fact, our main training at that time was suited to supply for manpower requirement for that organization. Right? So at the moment, in fact, I think more than 80% of staff there are all from UCAM, our graduates. Yeah, and even the Atomic Energy Licensing Act, I think more than 50% are all our graduates. So during those days, the focus was on these two organizations. But then, in terms of industry, actually there are a lot of industries in Malaysia that use nuclear technology. For example, non-destructive testing, radiography, and nuclear medicines, and others, manufacturing for quality control and so on. They all use nuclear technique, and many of our students are involved in those activities. True, because nuclear technique or nuclear technology is found in most industries. For example, if you just go for medicine, of course, you have all these X-rays and diagnostic and treatment. And then you have, for example, in agriculture and water supplies, environment and everything. Manufacturing, especially manufacturing, where nuclear technique is used for quality control, in terms of production and so on. Yeah. So that's why our students are almost everywhere. Yeah. And some of them end up as a custom officer as well. Okay, so I agree with you. The role of AELB in this, first, as I mentioned earlier, is building confidence. So we must show to the public that we have a very stringent rule. It is indeed very stringent rule for in terms of to get license when you operate a nuclear power program, or even for other installation, nuclear installation in industries. The regulation is so stringent. Inspection as well as monitoring, regular monitoring and so on. So very stringent. So I think this is one aspect that we must highlight to the public as a regulatory body. We show that we are serious in this business, and will ensure the motto is that we will ensure public safety in terms of nuclear technology. Of course, there, like for example, UCAM will be doing the promotion of how good nuclear power is and so on. But we will show to the public that here we have a very good regulatory system, regulatory body that will ensure the safety of the public and the environment. Well, I think my appointment is an honor for me, not just for me, but of course as a recognition to UKM, as we pioneered this nuclear science program since the 70s. So now with this nuclear power program, the other universities are developing the nuclear engineering or nuclear technology program. They are developing, and hopefully the more the merrier. And I think the future of nuclear power in Malaysia or nuclear energy in Malaysia is bright. It's not that because we don't have choice, but that we have to have options. Yes, for people are talking about energy security, so we must have option. Yes, exactly. Yeah, they can work with nuclear power plant, or they can work on the regulatory aspect, or they can go abroad, because in USA, after they are dormant for 30 years, now they are coming back to nuclear power because they realize they have the technology that has been now almost taken over by Korea and France, so they are coming back. So many countries, and if you're looking at the region, for example, all ASEAN countries except Brunei, I think they have announced. Vietnam is building one. Singapore has announced. Indonesia is very active in planning, only waiting for the announcement by the president. Of course, India and China. China is building, they say about 1 reactor a month. That is the rate they're building. So I think that 20 are being built at the moment. Yeah, that's right. So that is the rate, one They commission 1 reactor a month because just to cut down the amount of carbon dioxide that they produce. Well, lately the interest has increased. For example, our master program is getting more students. Initially we started with 10 students, now there are about 30 or 40 applied, and we have to limit number of student intake to 15 or 20. And we have this regular, we call it winter school and summer school in nuclear technology and nuclear engineering. The application is so many, so we have to limit to 50 places. So we have, at the moment we have 2 programs with KAIS and 1 program with University of Bodo, but there are 2 more programs coming in with Texas A&M University and Tokyo University. So in terms of human capitals, we train professionals who are already in, who have a degree in engineering, science, physics and so on, to moving into nuclear. And for the department is training undergraduate fresh from school to have a degree in nuclear science, and they can branch out later on into it's all recognized by many countries. So even previously we were training students from the Middle East. Yeah, many of them are coming here to do PhD or master in nuclear science, and many of our graduate, I know 1 or 2 are working as researchers in US and Canada, and one of them is becoming a lecturer there, and they stay there in the state. So if they want to go out, there's opportunity, but many people opted to stay in the country. But some of the adventurous ones, I know, they're doing very well in Canada, in Australia, and in the state.